family, welcome to this edition of The Natural Edge, where you get everything in natural bodybuilding. I am one of your hosts, Aubrey Warwick, along with the ever sheer magnificent Jody Sheekley Wright and our Yoda of bodybuilding, Sean Sully Sullivan.
Hey, I want to be the sheer magnificence. She can be Yoda.
That's the next episode.
That'd be a good look. Wow.
All right, now I'm joined with our two guests. I have the honor and the pleasure to be talking to a Yorton Cup champion in Eric Shelton and one of our best promoters and soon to be overseas promoter hosting a show in England, Will Carter. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us on Natural Edge.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Sully. I'm excited to be on here.
Let's just start with the obvious question. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what do you do? You got to start with the Yorton Cup champ. So, Eric.
What's going on, everybody? So my name is Eric Shelton. I was born and raised in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I ended up attending the great University of North Carolina A&T State University, where I went to college. I just grew up in the smaller city of Fayetteville playing baseball. Fun fact is I hated lifting weights when I was younger. I never lifted weights until I got to college. But my full-time job right now is I'm the head trainer at E25 Premium. I do most of the programming there. And I am also a part-time business owner of Eagle of Strength. It's a business that I found back in 2019, I think after my first Yorton actually, or my second Yorton. I found it after my second Yorton. And it's my coaching business of where I can bring like-minded individuals together and try to elevate them in the sport of bodybuilding, but not only in bodybuilding. I also integrate a little bit of faith in there and also make it a very family vibe as well with my group of guys that I have.
Love it. Hey, Will, what about you?
Yeah, so my name's Will Carter. I'm originally from England. I was born and raised there, spent the first 20 years of my life there, and then moved over to America with my now wife, Amanda Carter, who funnily enough, was actually an OCB pro before I was. And speaking of the Yorton Cup, she's actually competed at the Yorton Cup already as a bikini athlete, and I haven't. But we can talk about that more later. But I own No Limits Fitness, a gym in Monroe, North Carolina. I'm an OCB pro bodybuilder. I am the promoter of the Queen City Showdown and the up-and-coming OCB Great Britain. So I'm taking natural bodybuilding and the OCB back to England, which I'm really excited about. And I'm also an owner of No Limits Fitness Coaching. So I coach a lot of bodybuilders and then also like some lifestyle clients as well. I'm a personal trainer and also an E2M coach alongside Eric as well for E2M Premium, which helps a lot with this bodybuilding journey and inspiring others and motivating others and helping others get in the best shape, which is what I'm passionate about.
That's awesome. And you're gearing up for your first Yorton Cup, but in looking at your bio, there's a couple of things I found really, really interesting. One, you didn't get your pro card as a bodybuilder, did you?
I did, but I started as men's physique.
Men's physique.
So yeah, so my first 3 shows were men's physique.
And what made you transition into bodybuilding? You just got too big?
Right. So when I first moved to America, I would love training. I was really into bodybuilding and I wanted to do a show. Right. So when you look at a lot of those untested bodybuilders, which is what you see, especially back in those days, I was like, I'm never going to be as big as those guys, right? I'm never going to be able to do that. So I'll start out with men's physique. Also, I guess the posing, I got to be careful here because Eric's on it. Less poses, let's say that. But I felt like it had more of, like the model look at the time, which is probably what I had. But I had really good legs. And then once I got into it and I realized that, oh, these guys they're big, but they're not massive. And especially at the amateur level, right? Now, at the pro level, there's a lot of really big guys. But I started to realize that wearing those board shorts, I was actually hiding one of my strengths, which is my legs. And I love training hard. So as I continue to progress, my legs continue to develop. And I thought, actually, I'm probably better suited to bodybuilding. And at the time, classic physique wasn't around. So classic probably would have been the way I'd gone. But classic physique wasn't there at the time. So I just went straight from men's physique to bodybuilding. And in my first bodybuilding show, I won my pro card. So it was obviously where I was meant to be.
And speaking of classic physique, I got to bring it up with you, Eric, too, because I know you have been men's physique the majority of your career, but I also know you crossed over into classic for a show and you almost won that one too. You barely got edged out by another 2-time Yorton Cup champion, probably a friend of yours, I guess.
Yeah.
Tell us about that transition. Like, what drove you to say, hey, classic physique, and then what made you bounce back into men's physique? Because from my vantage point, your physique could easily transition between both very well.
Yeah, I think my whole mindset of that was I used to joke about it with my coach. Like, I love the posing of classic physique. And I used to joke about my coach, and he was like, you need to grow your hamstrings. So I grew my hamstrings, and then I was just like, I think everything is always well thought out. So I think some people make the leap to classic too early, just my opinion. But mine was a year methodical plan to compete in classic. And I also was playing the game of, we know bodybuilding is a mind game. I wanted to compete in a different category before I returned back to my main category in the Yorton. I was like, because you're always competing against yourself. And I always feel like judges are judging you against yourself. So if I show them me in a completely different category, then they have nothing to judge me against. So that was my mindset with that. But I had a completely, like, it was super fun. I didn't know Jamal at the time. So even competing against him in my very first pro show was amazing. A lot of the guys who saw me there, they were kind of shocked by it. But to get second place in my first classic show, I mean, it's not no small feat. But I think the reason I chose to go back to men's physique was I think we came up with a term, or it's already been a term, of being a tweener, where you're big enough to compete in the next category, or you're already at the top of one category. So I was just like, I had unfinished business to finish in men's physique. So I went back to men's physique to try to, hoist the illustrious title of that Yorton Cup.
Yeah, and speaking of it, here it is, the Yorton Cup. Now, what people don't realize on the Yorton Cup is that the cup that's presented to the champions is not the Yorton Cup. This is the original Yorton Cup, starting with Will Powell and bringing it all the way up to our modern era. This cup was actually retired because we ran out of space on the cup. So this year's be our first year with a brand new cup out there, starting this up again. We're keeping this for historic lineage. It's just like the Stanley Cup. It starts at the top, and you work every winner all the way down. So every champion from the Yorton Cup. And Eric, you're right there. You're right there. We're proudly displaying you here, my friend, because you got to hoist that thing up on stage. Which brings me to the fact that you guys have been both around a long time. Will, when was your first show? It was like 2015 or 2016, wasn't it?
I think 2016. Yeah, it was the No Gear Classic in May in Greensboro. And that was my first interaction with the pals. And, we have an incredible friendship and relationship with those guys now, just incredible people. And obviously, sadly, we lost Will earlier this year. And I mean, he was an icon for me, like I specifically remember turning up to check-ins at that show, shaking that man's hand and seeing the veins on his forearms. And, Will was always lean, right? Like he stayed 10, 15 pounds away from his stage weight probably. And I'm like, this guy is jacked, I mean, I was 22 or 23 at the time. And he was so welcoming. I mean, just he was who he was, it wasn't fake. It was authentic Will, very welcoming, a great icon of natural bodybuilding and just being an athlete in general. And he made me feel like I belonged, and that was really where my love for the OCB came around, and I haven't looked back since then. And I truly believe that the majority of promoters and people within the OCB, they give that to the athletes as well. Will just happened to be my first experience, and then obviously Terry's an amazing person. Jess, I mean, the whole family, just incredible people. So yeah, that was my first experience of stepping on stage, and I've done that show. I went back and did that show as a pro at bodybuilding, and I came second to Levi Burge. So another Yorton Cup champion, right? So I was like, okay, like I can take that, right? I've watched Levi on stage many times at the Yorton Cup and thought, wow, what a physique. And then to see myself up on stage against him and think, he clearly beat me, but I belong there. And that really fired me up.
That is the motivation, and having competed with Will a number of times, he was always one of my motivator mentors too, and a huge loss. But Eric, the thing about you is you've done like 5 or 6 Yorton Cups. You won the Battle of the Gods Pro, because that was the first time we met face to face, and I remember you came in there. If I'm not mistaken, wasn't there a former Yorton Cup champion in that year you beat?
Cyrus. Yeah.
Cyrus was there, and you beat Cyrus, who was a Yorton Cup champion. We had no Yorton Cup that year. That was the year we had COVID. you could almost say that, that's as close as you could be to winning another Yorton. But it just seems like you've been around forever. How old are you?
I'm 33, so I'm still a
You're
spring chicken.
33, and I cannot remember going back in a Yorton Cup or a pro show like for a decade that you weren't around. When did you break into the sport? How old were you when you won your pro card?
So this whole call is like a full circle moment, if we're being honest, because my first show was with another guy named Will, who's actually on this call. I actually won the inaugural Queen City Showdown back in 2017. So Will was my first interaction with the OCB. I went to his show and I competed, one debut, one open. And I think ever since then, like I think Will messaged me for a picture for a flyer, and me and him been cool ever since. And then your show, the Battle of Gods, was actually my very first pro win back in 2020. It took me, I think, 2 or 3 years to actually crack that first place in the pro show. But yeah, so full circle. But I've been around since, I think my very first show in another organization was back in 2017. My first show in the OCB, I think, was when was your first show? Was it 2018?
2018,
Or
yeah,
was it
2018.
Okay, so yeah,
One of the two,
2018, and
yes.
then I went to my first Yorton the year after. So
And this is the thing that I love about the natural bodybuilding realm is that there's like a lot of longevity in the sport. You guys neither one of you have touched your potentials. You guys could keep going on for another decade or more. When you look at at Magnum, and I just bring him up because winning 4 Yorton Cups, coming back for another one, he's kind of like the standard out of all the categories just because of the longevity. And he's, I think, 43. He hasn't even hit his stride yet. So staying natural and that longevity of the sport is great. But you guys have brought some big names up, some big talents. Will, who has been your inspiration in the sport? Like that person that drives you, not just the physique that drives you, but the human, and just that person that you think of that inspires you and drives you to the next gear.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things to touch on here, right? Because obviously there's phenomenal physiques out there, but I'm someone that's more about someone's character, how they inspire others, how they encourage others. I mean, for me personally, if you're going to be a champion, then you need to use that to inspire others and encourage others. So, I mean, Will Powell that we touched on earlier was obviously one. Unfortunately, I never really got to see him compete. I was a bit after that, but obviously I saw pictures of him and he was the first Yorton Cup champion and whatnot. But Will's humility is something we should all strive for, and just the way he treated people in general. Then I would also have to say Marshall Johnson, and purely because when my wife did the Yorton Cup, there was a seminar the following day. This was when it was up in DC, and it was Cliff Wilson and Marshall Johnson and Philip Ricardo were like guest speakers. And I remember I'd just seen Marshall on stage the day before, and then he came and he spoke, and the way he spoke, again, Marshall and Will, two very similar personalities and characters, just very inspiring, very motivating, very humble, and exactly the kind of person that I aspire to be, but I don't always get right. It's in my youth, I probably still don't always show the level of humility I should maybe. But yeah, two guys that I definitely aspire to. And then the crazy thing is, Sully, is that, they say work until your idols become your rivals. And honestly, I'm now at a point where I'm competing against the guys that I used to look up to. Now, I don't see them as rivals. I don't really believe in that. We all work hard, we all get on stage, but to be able to call a lot of them friends and interact with them. And when I got off the stage at the presidential a couple of weeks ago, Magnum, as you said, 4-time Yorton Cup champion, good friend of mine now, he was giving me some posing advice. He took me to the side, he said, hey man, like try hitting this like this and it will do this. And so having those relationships now and being at the point where, people that they want to help you and they still inspire you and you have friendships, that's really what drives me.
That's our culture. That's what I love about the OCB. That's what keeps me here. Who's your driving force there?
So when I was trying to think of when Will was talking, and I was thinking about character, accomplishments, accolades, and I know accolades and accomplishments never really excite me. Because it's really about the person behind those accolades, right? So I think the people who actually inspire me the most or that I followed the most in their footsteps are my two coaches, to be honest, Marianne and Jeff Cook. Jeff will tell you, stole his whole blueprint on how I coach athletes, kind of how I deal with certain situations. Whenever I need advice on, maybe a client, I go to them. And they kind of took me under their wing a very long time ago. And another fun fact with them is like Marianne actually judged the Queen City Showdown when I competed back in 2018. And Jeff actually walked backstage and helped me with posing, just because he does it at almost every show he's at. He'll go back and try to help someone. And it's not because he wants anything from them. It's not because he wants the attention. It's just like he's just a fan of bodybuilding and he wants to help. So he was just like, hey, twist your hip. Like, he had no ties to me or anything. I had a coach, but he had no ties to me. My coach wasn't helping me with my posing. And he came back there, and then I guess I said it was like God sent, because I joined up with them back in 2019. And that's when I was runner-up at the Yorton.
I briefly met him at the presidential when I was back talking to you. So I look forward to getting to know him. He's going to be at the Yorton, right?
Yes.
He's not going to send you to the Yorton Cup without him being there.
Nah, he's right up the street. He'll come and be there with me.
I look forward to chatting with him backstage. The coolest thing about this year's Cup is that being the promoter and not head judging or having some other role, I actually get to just hang out back there with the athletes and just soak it all in. For me, 20 years after the first time I competed in one, and now 20 years later, being able to be, in that role, it's going to be the most satisfying moment for me, is just hanging backstage and watching you guys. Hey, a couple of rapid fire questions. So I'm just going to go back and forth with a question for each of you just for fun. So, Eric, favorite cheat meal?
Cookies, preferably 7-Eleven or Subway.
7-Eleven?
They have
Not
great
crumble
cookies. They have great cookies at 7-Eleven. I promise you, they have great cookies.
Will, favorite bodybuilding pose?
Oof. Hands over head, abdominals and thighs. Probably my best shot.
And you do that one. That you know what? That's probably one of your 2 or 3 best poses too. So, and the funny thing is that is coincidentally enough my favorite pose of all time too. Hands over head, abs and thighs.
Sonny, it must be the shorter guys. It must be good for us, right?
Short guys with good legs and nice abs, we like that pose.
Exactly, yeah.
Eric, favorite sports team?
Oh, man. Which sport? Does it matter?
Don't matter. What's your favorite sport? What's your favorite team?
My favorite sport is baseball, and I guess I'll go with the Braves.
All right. Now, this is interesting because baseball being one of my favorite sports, too, the whole reason that if I could have been anything in life, I wanted to be a major league shortstop. And I was a very good baseball player right up into the time that all the other boys hit puberty. And I didn't until like 6 years later, and they all got bigger, stronger, could hit a ball, and then I ended up in bodybuilding. But yeah, baseball for me too. I don't follow it as much as I used to, but Minnesota Twins were my team. Big Twins fan. All right, Will, favorite animal for a pet? Like what do you want for a pet?
You have to have it as a pet, or it's.
If you could have anything, a giraffe, a rhino, a shark,
a wolf.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I have a thing for wolf. I have a Siberian husky, so I mean it's about as close as I can get to a wolf that's not going to eat me.
I had an Alaskan Malamute. That was before I got my little miniature dachshund. I had a 125-pound Alaskan Malamute, which is
that's
as
a big
close
boy.
as you're going to come to a wolf.
Yeah.
Acted like a wolf. She was great. Hey, this is going to go back and forth to both of you. Eric, what's been your most defining moment in life so far? On stage, off stage, the most defining moment for you in life?
I think the thing I could think of right now, I'll probably think of a way better answer, but I think it's when I actually made a plan. If it's pertaining to bodybuilding, like I made a plan in regards to bodybuilding and to my mom. Like I used to write plans and say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. And for her to help or support me with it, right? Because she's just like, hey, this is just a dream. Like I was, like I said, great baseball player at the time. And then I shifted to wanting to bodybuild. And I gave her a plan, like 2-year, 3-year contingency plan. And then to see her cry at one of my shows because I won was pretty awesome. Just because it was a full circle moment of her realizing that I made a plan, I stuck to something, and I finished it and completed it. So that was pretty big for me.
The things that we can learn about ourselves that we can apply to other aspects of our life. I say all the time that bodybuilding done right, it can change you spiritually, socially, emotionally, and physically.
I have another one. I'm sorry. That was horrible. That was not my best answer. My best answer was actually getting baptized a couple of weeks last month. That's probably my most redefining moment right there. Making that decision, making that jump, and that leap of faith. Like I dove into my faith really big before my first Yorton Cup. Really found myself heavy, drowning in my faith that year, and then made the big decision 2 years later to get baptized.
Excellent.
2 moments. Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, I got to ask you the same question. So
I mean, the first one is going to be the same for me. I was I was an atheist for 31 years of my life, complete denier of God, didn't even want to entertain it. And then there's been a few things in my life that have opened my eyes, and finding my faith and then getting baptized and continuing to do that has just brought so much peace and joy to my life that I just view life so differently. The next one, it would be just having kids. Having kids has just been the biggest blessing in my life ever. I mean, it brings me so much joy to be a father, and it brings a whole new level of meaning to my life. And it's actually made me a better bodybuilder, because a lot of people say, well, if I have kids, it's going to take away from bodybuilding. And I'll always tell them, I'm like, okay, look at a number of the last few Yorton Cup champions. If we take Jillian or whoever, like a lot of them have kids, and they've improved ever since. But what it's done for me is it's made me realize bodybuilding is you eat your meals, you train, you get your sleep, and you give it time. But it doesn't need to be your life. It doesn't have to absolutely consume everything about you, right? And then I think what it causes people to do is they live and die by their results and by their placings. Well, we all know that placings can change at every show. You might win one year and then the next year you come second, but if all your value is on coming first, then you're going to be unfulfilled. But for me, I compete to win 100%. I'm a competitive person. But at the same time, I know no matter what my placing is, I'm going to hug and kiss my children and my wife that night. And I'm going to go back to living my life the same way I was living my life before. So, kids have allowed me to realize that, bodybuilding is still a passion. It hasn't taken away from it, but there is more to life, and that in turn has actually made me a better bodybuilder. It's when I've seen the best progress, And then I think having God in my life, I no longer feel the need to have control over every single element. I can just do what I need to do. I can pray about it, and I can say, God, take care of this. Just give me the strength, give me the resilience, give me the patience to handle all of this while I'm in prep, because we all know prep gets to a point where it absolutely sucks. And if it doesn't, you're probably not ready. And just being able to pass that on, to God has really helped me. So those are the main two things. I'm glad Eric had to go first. It gave me some thinking time.
Hey, a couple more questions, then we're going to wrap it up. Just a quick, easy one. As professional athletes, do you consider yourselves role models? Eric first.
Absolutely. I think I consider myself a role model way before I was a pro athlete. I used to train kids at this, it's called the Carolina Acceleration, where I used to train kids. And even back then, when the kids their parents would walk up to me and be like, yo, my son's been talking about you all day, or couldn't wait to get here. And I think that's when I really realized that I was having an impact on others. So I had to carry myself accordingly. So even with the things that I do as a coach, I always tell my team, hey, we protect the brand, protect your name first, and then protect the brand. And that's the brand of Eagle of Strength. So that means we compete with sportsmanship. We shake people's hands. We congratulate other people. We don't go bash people. And I have to lead with that. So I always tell people I can't lead from the back. So the way I carry myself, hopefully it matriculates down to my athletes as well. But I definitely think we're role models, because most of the top pro athletes, or most of even some amateur athletes, they become the new coaches. They become the promoters. So if you carry yourself bad and not being a role model before you even get that role, how can people really follow you or want to support you?
I get.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll just say, as someone that has known Eric for a long time, he absolutely does live that. Eric really does live that way. Great guy, great champion, and someone that I have massive respect for. Not just because he's won the Yorton Cup or won other pro shows, but because of who he is. And like we touched on earlier, I value that far more than someone's accolades. And 100% I believe that we're role models. People are always watching. They're always observing everything you do, especially when you get to that higher level. I haven't won the Yorton Cup yet, and I say yet because it is a goal of mine, and I do believe that I've got a lot more to give the sport, and that it is achievable for me one day. I'm not beating Magnum this year. I'm okay with that. He'll retire soon enough, I hope. Magnum, I hope you're watching. But yeah, I do believe that we have an obligation as professional athletes to lead by example and set the standard for what an athlete should be and how they should carry themselves and how they act, from the backstage to on stage to everything you do in life, and we're all going to make mistakes, but it's the ability to take responsibility and own up to those mistakes. Every now and again on stage, we may show a side of us that we don't want to, because we're extremely competitive, but we can also take accountability and responsibility for that, you know, and say, look, I didn't act the way that I should have. I apologize. That wasn't the real me. That was the heat of the moment. And I think people can respect that, you know, but I would 100% say that we are role models. Yes.
And if you guys followed anything I ever say, one of my catchphrases, I'm going to put it in the back of shirts one day, is "Don't be a beautifully wrapped empty box." You
Ooh,
know, the
I want
significance
that
and the
shirt.
meaning.
Solly, make that shirt.
I'll do them in the natural edge shirt. So natural edge on the front and "Don't be a beautifully wrapped empty box" on the back. But
Love it.
I've been saying that for years. You know, I used it with my airmen. I've used it in the police department. I use it as all the time with bodybuilders, and that is, I'm glad that I had the two of you on, because you personify that there's so much more of you than just your physiques. You know, I would be close to you and friends with you and want to hang out with you both. If you never won anything, wouldn't matter to me. It's who you are as people. And with that, closing remarks, anything that you want to leave the audience with, any closing remarks? I'm going to start with Will, because I know that you're getting ready in the Marvel Universe. You're taking over as Captain America. So it'd be great to see you there. Because I swear to God, I could give you a shield you shave and you could look that part. But anyway, aside from your future role in Marvel TV, any closing remarks?
Yeah, so I just want to say, for any of you watching that are debating whether or not you should compete naturally or whether you should stay natural, guys, I promise you that you can take your physique such a long way. The ceiling for natural bodybuilding is so high, but what you'll find is that it takes a decade plus before you can even really start to say, okay, I'm starting to really shape up and take shape, right? Like, me and Eric have been in this game for quite a long time already, but both of us are just scratching the surface. I don't think I'm even close to my peak. You know, I truly believe that I've got 7, 8, 10 years before I'm fully peaked. You know, I've got that amount of time, but I delay the gratification and be willing to put that time in. You know, and one more thing I'll say is, as a promoter in the OCB is a phenomenal federation for you to grow in and get opportunities. And that's what I've loved so much about the OCB, is just committing to it and seeing them be willing to, you know, from head judging to emceeing to promoting shows, and allowing me the opportunity to take a show back to England, which is something I always wanted to do. And when I saw that the OCB was going to Australia, going to Canada, I reached out to Marjorie and I said, Marjorie, look, if there's going to be a show in England, I want it. I want to have this opportunity to take it back to my home country and build the OCB, build this federation, because I believe this federation is so special. I really do. And the feedback I get from athletes, the feedback I get from spectators, the feedback I get from everyone is how well the shows are run, you know, how efficient and organized they are, how good the check-in process is, how good the caliber of competition is, all of it, you know, and it's just, I highly recommend that you compete in the OCB. I'm not just saying that because now I'm a promoter. I'm saying that because it was the first federation I was involved in, and I haven't looked back.
Well, thank you. And any of that you said about the OCB is just because of people like you. One thing I do want to tell you is that in the OCB, we don't take every promoter that reaches out to us. We get reached out left, right, and center. We say no more than we say yes, particularly internationally now, because we're getting approached all the time by people that want to, we're in this country, we're in that country. And, we always have a lot of dialogue. It takes a long time to come to a vote, to consensus, because we're a voting board. It's all four of us together. We didn't even meet with you, Will. It was a text message, and it was like a unanimous yes. It was like, I think we were still on the phone with Marjorie, because you know how she is. She's a bot. She's not a human.
Oh, yeah.
And I think
she's a machine.
All got to go back and finish the conversation with you all in one fell swoop. So we're only as good as our teammates, and you're an incredible teammate.
Thank you very much.
I know I'm speaking for
super grateful for all the opportunities.
We appreciate you. Eric, what about you?
I'm gonna keep mine
Any
short.
closing remarks?
I'm gonna keep mine short because I'm doing the potty dance over here. But the best advice I could give anybody is, and I said this the other day in the interview that I did, and I think I really loved the quote, and I wish I could quote who said it, but it's, don't compare anybody's highlights to where you're currently at, and just remember that the cover only tells a certain part about the book. So always try to deep dive into either your favorite person's journey, and kind of like Will said, if before you make any rash decisions, deep dive into, the top natural athletes or even a natural athlete. Talk to them and actually seek guidance from a natural athlete. I always tell guys when they say, hey, man, I want to compete. And I'll always try to either push them to the OCB or at least get them to look into the natural organizations, just because it's like, hey, even if you don't plan on staying here, at least let this be your first experience, because most likely that's going to make you want to stay here. And that's what happened to me. Like I said, I'm very transparent. I started in the NPC back in 2017, and I never looked back once I came to the OCB.
And the Federation is only as good and successful as due to our incredible champions that we have. I mean, I said it on your feature last week when you guys asked about the OCB and the Yorton Cup, where we're only as good as our athletes, our champions, and our promoters. You guys make it. We're just a bunch of talking heads. So, hey, gents, thank you. I know I, for one, got a lot of value out of our conversation. I'm sure that a lot of people are going to be reaching down in you. And more importantly, I'll see you guys in 3 weeks.
Yes, sir.
As you battle.
Let's go.
Thank you.
Hey, so for Pose Down, we're going to start it off in Panama City.
All right, so in Panama City, Jenny Rodriguez hosted the OCB Fire and Ice Classic. So at this show, she had over 50 competitors. And really, this event always brings the heat with some tough classes. And take a look at this electric energy on stage.
And moving up the coast to Hilton Head, South Carolina, also on August 30th, was the OCB Low Country Natural. And that was promoted by the terrific Nam Lee, who has been a fixture for a while. Roll that beautiful muscle.
wrap it up down in the land down under. We're down in Queensland, Australia. Lisa Blackburn promoted her third OCB event, and this was her by far biggest with almost 50 competitors. One little caveat for those of you who haven't been watching or following the One More Rep series that we've been doing, which is just an infrequent extra drop. I had a feature on the men down under, and I had a feature on the women down under, where I highlight Lisa and her bodybuilding career. So let's check out the fabulous Aussie. Hey, that wraps up another episode of OCB Natural Edge. Hey, thank you for watching, and we appreciate you. And in closing, as always, train hard, be safe, and stay natural.